The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan organization formed to encourage citizen participation in government. It never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. The statements and opinions of the candidates are presented solely in the interests of public service and in no way are to be construed as an endorsement thereof by the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters takes no responsibility for any of the views or facts stated by the candidates.
Good evening, candidates and audience, and welcome to this forum for the Rochester Community School District Board of Education election. I am Dr. Cheryl Mitchell-Terrio, a member of the League of Women Voters Oakland area, and I am not a resident of this district. The League of Women Voters would like to remind tonight's attendees and viewers that the Rochester Community District and the City of Rochester Hills are two completely separate entities. The city is proud of Rochester Community Schools and Avondale School Districts and their strong partnership with both. However, neither the City Council nor City Administration has any vote or influence on any decisions made by the two local school boards. The League of Women Voters normally hosts all of its forums for any local election here at City Hall, and tonight is no exception. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. It is the League's intention that following this forum, you will be informed and able to cast a responsible vote. Tonight, we will be introducing the candidates seeking election to the position of Board of Education member. 4 candidates are vying for 2 seats of a 6-year term, and 3 candidates are competing for 1 2-year term. These positions are unpaid. Views expressed at this forum are those of the candidates. The League does not take responsibility for these views. The format for this forum has been established by the League, and the candidates have signed a pledge to abide by the ground rules. We ask that the audience remain silent during this forum and turn off all cell phones. Following the opening statements, candidates will respond to questions from members of the audience. Questions can be directed to any or all of the candidates. Each candidate will have the opportunity to respond to any of the questions. Responses to questions will not be timed, but candidates have been asked to limit their answers to 2 minutes or less. Follow-up and rebuttals to questions will be allowed, but will be limited to 30 seconds. The order of who responds first will rotate. Questions and responses may only address issues that pertain to the position of the office the candidate is seeking. We ask you to please hold all applause until the conclusion of this program. We will now begin with the opening statements with candidates seeking a 6-year term. We will start with Jessica Gupta.
Hello, good evening, everybody, and to everyone watching from home, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for offering this important forum. I am seeking to retain my recently appointed seat on the Rochester Community Schools Board of Education because I want to continue to be a voice for our children and our families. I've spent my entire adult life invested in the next generation. As a social worker, as a college educator, working with youth and families, as a longtime volunteer in our school district, and as the mother of an RCS graduate. Some of the attributes that I will continue to bring, hopefully, to the trustee role are being able to reach consensus on difficult issues across diverse stakeholder groups and understanding firsthand what our students and our families need to succeed. I have a demonstrated track record of being committed to transparency and accountability, having pushed back on district decisions at times, but always maintaining civil discourse and a collaborative spirit. If elected, I will continue to bring a calm, balanced, and logical approach to the board, centering students at all times.
Next, we have Dennis Talluto.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for the opportunity. The reason I'm running for the RCS Board of Education is to restore integrity, trust, transparency, and governance to a broken and declining system in dire need of new leadership. I'm a husband of 40 years, a father and a grandfather, including a grandson in the RCS system. I'm a veteran of the United States Coast Guard, enlisting as a 16-year-old junior and departing in '75 after my high school graduation. Completed my 4-year service commitment and exited with a good conduct honorable discharge, after which I entered into the electrical and electronic engineering program at LTU. I have a very extensive 40-year career in technology and consulting in the Fortune 500 world, as well as 2 startups. I served 3 terms on 2 Silicon Valley boards of directors, elected or appointed by such companies as Hewlett-Packard, IBM, Cisco, Hitachi, and others. My full biographical information is available on the network. The relevant and significant professional qualities and skills that I intend to bring to the RCS Board of Education is business, industry, and technology consulting experience especially in board governance, leadership, and integrity, strategic and tactical planning, as well as resource management and problem resolution skills. As I said earlier, the district has been in decline for some time, according to the available data from the district and the state of Michigan going back to 2013. Which obviously predated.
Mr. Talluto, I'm going to ask you to wrap up, please.
Thank you. To sum it up, the district is in decline according to all available metrics and is in need of new leadership, new ideas, and a turnaround. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Eddie Hillery.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. We have busy schedules, we have children, we have families, and I really appreciate you taking your time to witness this forum. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, to all RCS stakeholders. I am running for RCS Board of Education because I am a son and product of Rochester Community Schools. I grew up here where the foundation of who I am as a man started. I was fortunate enough to have caring adults within RCS throughout my ascent to graduation, and I hope to continue that tradition by becoming a trustee. My wife and I have chosen to raise our family here in large part due to the quality of education that I received and the greater Rochester community as a whole. My entire adult career has been dedicated to public service, which was sparked at Rochester High in Mrs. Murphy's practical law class. She's here today. I have served communities as a sheriff's deputy and currently serve Oakland schools as an attendance officer. I believe in educating the whole child so that they can thrive at RCS and out in the world. I am a PTA member, elementary school classroom parent, and a coach within the district for over 15 seasons and multiple buildings. My commitment to Rochester Community Schools is deep-rooted, and my love for education is strong. I hope to earn your support and your vote.
Next, we have Beth Litkouhi.
Well, first of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and thanks to all of you for coming out tonight. I'm Beth Litkouhi. I grew up in Rochester. I went to these public schools, grades K through 12, graduated from Rochester High School, and I had a wonderful, rigorous education here. I went on to become a public school teacher, and I was so glad when my husband and I got the chance to move back to Rochester so that we could raise our family here and send our kids to these great schools. I assumed everything was going well, but in the past couple years, I've learned that our district leadership needs better oversight. Unfortunately, we've been experiencing a decline in enrollment, staff leaving our district, and a drop in college proficiency. We've experienced fiscal mismanagement and widespread dismissal and retaliation against parents in response to many legitimate concerns. We need to stop the decline and restore our focus on academic excellence, transparency, partnership with parents, and accountability. Unfortunately, our current board is not acknowledging our challenges. As a former teacher and current parent, I'm invested. I understand education, classroom challenges, and I want to support teachers. I'm also willing to listen to our community and advocate for kids and their families. I'm asking for your vote because I want to serve for the sake of our kids and our community to help restore and preserve our great public schools.
And now the candidates for a 2-year term, starting with Joe Patel.
Hello, neighbors. I'm seeking to retain my seat on the Rochester School Board because I'm on a mission. I have more work to do, and I need more time. I'm fighting for an independent board, a true partner to the superintendent, and yes, a board that will, when necessary, stand up. We have a great district, and I want to keep it that way. Our kids are doing well academically, the facts will show. I want to keep it that way by focusing and renewing our focus on academics. Our children are finally recovering from the trauma of the pandemic. I want to see their recovery through by supporting them in their mental health. And while we're talking about mental health, I'm worried about the staff and the teachers, and I want to focus on them too. Our finances are in great shape, and the balance sheet is strong. I want to keep it that way by focusing on fiscal responsibility and smart decisions. I've been a lawyer for 17 years, first at the government as a litigator and now as a business executive. I work for one of the largest corporations in the world. I know government and I know business. And the challenges we face in the coming 2 years, I think requires someone who knows government and knows business. This is an important skill set that I'm offering. And if you'll have me, I'll put it to use for your school district. I'm doing this out of a sense of public service, but I'm doing it for a personal reason too. My wife and I have invested our hopes and dreams in the schools that my children attend. I'm proud of them, and I'm proud of the people that work there. So, just like you, I want what's best for them and your children and your grandchildren and all our community. And I want our schools to prepare them for what lies ahead. With your help, we'll do it.
Next, we have Andrew Reaver.
First, I want to thank the League of Women's Voters for hosting us, for everyone that's shown up here, for all the candidates showing up today. Again, this is something that is very difficult for a lot of us that have never thought we'd be sitting here. So again, thank you to everyone sitting at this table. I've chosen to run because I have to acknowledge that my lack of engagement is a reason for why the district is where it is. Many of us did not listen to board meetings before August of 2020. That is something I will regret, making those decisions, but it's something I can acknowledge. And that's the biggest thing. We have to be honest with ourselves and acknowledge the problems that we have. And anytime you have a problem, it's never going to be positive, but it doesn't mean it's negative. It doesn't mean someone's being negative. We have to be honest with the problems that we face so that we can address them and fix them. Through the closing of the schools, the biggest thing that opened my eyes was the lack of empathy showed towards the families that did not have the means to supplement their students' education, and that parents were retaliated against for simply advocating for the mental health of their children. That has to be what changes. At the heart of what is wrong is we do not have open and honest dialogue. Too many people are afraid to share their opinion. And if we as adults cannot do that, openly and honestly share our opinions, what example are we setting for our children? That is why I'm running for the board. We have to be able to start speaking to one another. We have to admit when we have problems so that we can actually fix them. and someone that has spent the last 7 years in a problem-solving role, we have to ask the hard questions, and we have to use data and tangible results to fix this.
And next we have Julie Alspaugh.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us, and thank you to all of you who are taking time out of your schedule to be here tonight. My name is Dr. Julie Alspaugh, and I am a proud graduate of Rochester High School. I have lived out here since before it was called Rochester Hills. My husband and I chose to raise our 3 children in this community, and we have 3 children that graduated from Adams High School. Beyond that, I've also been a student teacher at McGregor, and I've been a long-term sub at many buildings, including special ed. And I tell you this because I come to this position of the board as the prospect of a graduate, a student, a parent, and a teacher. And I'm here because I believe in priorities, and the priority for me is student learning. Because the pandemic has set us back, our students have had mental health issues, they've had academic learning losses, and I think we need to work on strengthening and addressing those gaps. My other priority is building a strong, diverse community. Our schools are the heart of our community, and they need to be where everyone feels welcome. My last priority is increasing our communication and transparency so that we can have difficult conversations that are still constructive. So again, my name is Dr. Julie Alspaugh, and I look forward to all of your questions.
Thank you, candidates. Now for our first question from the audience.
Hi, thanks everyone for coming tonight. Dr. Shaner was kind enough to share some information right before this meeting, and I'd like to direct this question to Dennis, Carol, Beth, and Andrew specifically, and if the other candidates want to follow up, I would appreciate that also. So the information I have, I don't see where our district is in decline. I found some information online today that ranks our district 11 out of 557 in Michigan. 21 RCS seniors were named National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. 46% of RCS graduates from the class of 2021 maintained a 3.7 grade point average. It goes on and on. Our district, in my opinion, is in fine shape, and I'd be happy to send our children here. And I want to know why you think our district is in decline based on these statistics. Do you have other statistics that we should know about? And I'd like to direct it to the three, Dennis, Carol, Beth, and Andrew, and then if the other candidates want to follow up, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that question. So I have looked at some of the recent press articles about school rankings and so forth, and many of those articles are kind of written on how some of the automotive companies used to do their internal ranking, which was quarter over quarter, year over year, comparing to themselves, when they should look at the market outside of themselves and how they stand. But to your point, are there metrics? All you have to do is go to MI School, which reports on district and state metrics. So we've lost about 400 students. There are fewer school-age students in the Rochester district, in spite of RCS growing with all the new building and construction. There has been a 4x increase in the number of school-age children that choose not to come here. They're going elsewhere. They're going private, they're going parochial, and probably about 1,000 of them are homeschooling. So there's a gap in kids that are just not coming. Our school enrollment has basically been flat for 10 years. So that's not growth, that's decline. About 200 educators have left. SAT scores have been in decline since 2017, and that's year-over-year scores. Of the 95%...
If you would wrap up your answer,
yep,
please.
One more. Of the 95% of the students that do graduate, 40 to 45% are not college ready. Their scores, their testing show that. So, I mean, the data's there, and a lot of it comes right from this district.
Ms. Litkouhi?
Okay, so first of all, I believe you're probably talking about the article that was on niche.com. And one thing to keep in mind with that article, of course, it's wonderful to see that our schools are top in the state and that sort of thing, but that article, 50% of the way those schools were scored was based on academic achievement, and 50% was based on opinion surveys from social media, as well as comments from the district website. So just something to take in mind, that it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. Now, when we say that there's been a decline, it doesn't even necessarily mean that right now everything is terrible. It's more about the trajectory and where things are going. So we can talk about this in terms of enrollment and in terms of academic achievement. So enrollment, at the last board meeting, we were told that enrollment is down because the population in the state of Michigan is down and because of low birth rate. Unfortunately, that doesn't really tell the whole story. I went and looked at the population in Rochester on SEMCOG. If you call them, you can get this information of how many school-aged children were in our district 10 years ago to now. So that's ages 5 to 17. So about 10 years ago, we had 16,000 school-aged children in our district, and of those children, 14,500 went to Rochester schools. That was about 90%. Presently, we have about 18,000 children in the district. So we're actually up by 2,000. Of those, 14,600 go to school in our district. That's only 80%. So we've gone from 90% of the market to 80% of the market. That we've decreased 10 points of market share. When we say we've lost 400 kids in 2 years, that's not insignificant. That's greater than the population of Brewster Elementary School. So what I'm wondering is the district asking families why they're leaving? Because when I've talked with lots of families about why they've been leaving the district, many of them say, actually every one of them have said that they weren't given an exit survey. I think that's a problem. We've got to make sure we're asking the question why if people are choosing not to stay in our district.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver?
This goes right to the point of we just got to be honest with what we're talking about. So financial responsibility. From February of 19 to I think it was May of 22, we've spent over $600,000 for a PR firm to put out emails like that, to cherry pick data right as there's campaigning, there's clearly the message has been that there's a decline. And so we get an email that's got cherry pick data. No one is saying that RCS does not do things well. No one is saying that there aren't exceptional students, exceptional teachers, exceptional families. That is at the bedrock of what makes this district great. The issue is we are not supporting all of the teachers the way we need to, and we aren't supporting the masses. When we're talking about 21 students accomplish something, that is great for those 21 students. But we are a district of under 15,000 now. That's a very small percentage of our population. We have to start focusing on the majority of students. Why aren't we talking about the number of families with IEPs that are having to pay for advocates out of their own pocket to get their IEPs honored? We're not talking about that. That is a problem. So again, someone that works in manufacturing where data-driven problem solving is what we do, we have to understand not all numbers are data, not all numbers tell the whole story. We need to start having relative metrics that measure how we are doing as a district. I would like to see how many families that have IEPs are paying an outside advocate, and we should be working to lower that number. We should be identifying why do they need advocates, and how do we as a district take that responsibility on and reduce that number and stop cherry picking data and return that $600,000 back to the classroom.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Patel?
Mr. Patel. Joe, let's take the opinion out of the facts. Can you hear me okay now? Okay. Let's take the opinion part out. Last week, the Free Press did a story, and one of our high schools is 8 in the state for the SAT score. That's not opinion, that's a score. That just means only 7 schools, not in the county, not in southeastern Michigan, but in the whole state, were better. And while we're asking for opinions, why don't we ask the opinions of the hundreds of families that have returned to the district since the pandemic? Look, We were virtual schooling. It was disruptive. Some parents, hundreds have come back. When we talk about just one point about the demographics. Has there been a decline? There has. We've known about it for years because we have top-notch demographers that have been telling the district for years that this is going to happen. Let me give you a stat about this one. In our local area, the average school district's about 8%. Their loss, their enrollment drop. Rochester, 0.8. So if we're talking about beating the market, we're beating the market pretty well there. And certain school districts have open enrollment. We don't. So consider that as well when you think about the students who have joined. Of course, we have 28 schools. We have 15,000 students. We have thousands of employees. Of course, there's been bumps and bruises over the last years. But I don't believe we're in decline. I think our best days are ahead.
And before I allow for a rebuttal, I understand that Ms. Alspach wants to respond.
I would as well.
So I think one of the things, if we look at our data and comparative market, that's a very honest thing to think about. And what we can do is we can compare that to the statewide, the countywide, and then just to our district in general. All this data is available in MI schools. If you look at the ACT rate for the percentage met of student growth, Oakland's as a county is at 48%. The state is at 33%. Our school system is at 60%. And we have been through the pandemic, have varied only about 8% in there. So we have maintained that high above average rate through pandemic, through the utter disruption that the last years have caused. Does that mean we're perfect? No, but we have room for improvement, but we are doing very well. I was a special ed teacher in another district, and I can tell you I know what it's like when your average ACT score is 14 versus at that time when I was teaching, the average ACT score in in Rochester was 21. So I know that we are serving our students and we are giving them, comparative to the market, a good education.
Thank you. And we have Mr. Hillery.
Thank you. So when we talk about decline, we have some amazing stats that people are giving, and I have no reason to doubt them. But as most of you do, we look at the eyeball test. We see when a house goes up in your neighborhood, it sells for 10% over what is asked. When you check Facebook, you look around, we're losing green space because houses are being built at a clip that we can't keep up with, because people are clamoring and want to be in our district. They want to be in our area. They see how great our schools are, how successful our students are, and they want to be a part of that. I myself, I've moved back to this area because I had an awesome education here, and my children are getting an awesome education here at RCS. So stats are great, but what are you guys seeing when you look in your neighborhoods? People are moving in. The roads are crowded. There's a lot of traffic going on. It's because people are here. People love this community and they love their district.
Ms. Gupta?
Yeah, I just wanted to push back a little bit on this narrative that our district is in some major decline. We have some areas, as we will always have, that we can improve on and that we should be committed to continuous improvement on, looking back, what did we learn from the pandemic, what can we do better in the future. However, when a stat like from U.S. News that says, defines college readiness as having taken 3 AP courses, earning a 3 or better on the exam, is being cited as evidence of how our district is in decline, I want to challenge that and flip that. What that's telling us is 60% of our district's graduates, by the way, 95% of them do go on to college or some sort of post-secondary education, and that 60% of them, when they graduate, have taken 3 AP courses and earned a 3 or better on those exams, earning themselves some college credit when they get there. So I think, it's confounding to me for someone to say, well, we're not blaming the teachers and we're not blaming the kids, but we're in decline. When there are 3 candidates sitting here today who were endorsed by the teachers union. And so you have to consider that. Who has the support of the teachers? Who has earned the confidence of the teachers that we're dependent on to provide a good education to our community and our students? So I think there's a lot of misinformation, quite frankly, that is being put out in this campaign, and we can't possibly refute it all here. We don't have the time for that, and I don't want to do that. I know no one wants to hear that. It's frustrating, it's exhausting, but please be discerning. Please do your homework. Look at it yourself. Make your own decisions. But look at the evidence. How are things being defined that are being reported out? And really make a well-informed decision when you make your choices.
And we allow 30 seconds for a rebuttal, and Ms. Litkouhi had raised her hand.
Okay, so go to michiganschooldata.org. You will see all of the stats there about college proficiency. Go to SEMCOG if you want to see what the populations were. As far as academic achievement, remember, what we're talking about is just what we're able to see with these objective measures. In 2017, we had 68% college proficient. Presently, we're at 55%. We've lost 53 points in SAT scores. I understand we want to have the best attitude possible. I do too. In order to do that, we have to recognize the problem so that we can fix it and change the trajectory. This is all about, don't wait till it's too late. See what policies are going on right now that need to be changed. Policies, not teachers.
Thank you, and as a reminder, 30 seconds, Mr. Weaver.
So it goes back to, we just got to get to the facts. That report they used about the high schools being ranked, Ruther Middle School was listed as a high school. So we got to just throw out these news articles and all that stuff and just deal with the facts. The state is in decline. We just sat and listened to our board tell us that we're doing better. The decline's not as bad as the rest of the state. We just need to focus on our district. Get back in our lane and focus on our problem. So even with the 100 students that supposedly re-enrolled, we are still down a net 400. Like, that number doesn't change. So that means even with the ones you added back in, you still lost 400. So let's just focus on us and stop worrying about everybody else and just we're not declining as fast as other people, or we're not doing as bad as somebody else.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Ms. Gupta, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the enrollment information that's being shared and just put that in a little bit more context. So the last year we had a very high birth rate was the year our son was born, which was 2002, the 9/11 babies. Since then, nationally, there's been a birth rate decline. So obviously we cannot educate or attract students into our district when those babies have not been born. And that's been identified for years and projected out, as Joe mentioned earlier. And we've been planning fiscally and in other ways for that in our district in terms of infrastructure and staffing. So that is not new news. What is a little bit unexpected,
if you would wrap up with this comment,
is
please.
that we are beating what we had projected to lose. We are not losing as much as we thought we would. We're actually capturing 96% of our market share of students that we could capture at this moment.
Mr. Talluto.
So I agree. The numbers are clear about Michigan either holding its own or declining on a national level, population and so forth. But this district, the RCS district, is in growth mode and has been for decades. The fact is we're losing percentage of market share. We have almost 20% of the kids that live in this district, their parents are voting with their feet and their money, and they're going someplace else.
Thank you, Mr. Talluto. And we have a question from the audience.
Not all things that count can be counted. The district is doing work around the increasing social and emotional learning of our students, which has been shown to improve academic performance. What is your definition of success for students, and how will you work in partnership with our administrators to support the social emotional learning of our students? This is for everybody.
And let's start with Ms. Gupta.
Well, first of all, thank you for that really excellent and important question. As a social worker, a mental health provider working with kids in our district for over a decade, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And the question is how would I define success for our students in light of their social and emotional learning needs. And the way I would define it, based on my years of experience working with kids, is not by their SAT score or how many AP courses they took or got a great score on, or what college they got into, or any other academic accolade. Not that those aren't important. My son did all those things. It was wonderful. But when they graduate, do they feel good about themselves on the inside? Do they have a connection to a strong support system that they value, that they can lean on? Those are the things that get you through life. And those are the things that are going to matter way more than the academic achievements. And actually, you could have all the academic achievements in the world and not have those things, and it won't get you anywhere.
Mr. Talluto?
Yes. So my thoughts on SEL, as well as a number of non-curricular items that are introduced in class, that we do need to focus more on the academics. I think there's overemphasis on SEL. As a matter of fact, some of the data that from MI schools shows a rate of acceleration of kids leaving the district as SEL became more and more incorporated after 2013. I look also to some of the areas, some of the things that I'm involved in, say on the military side, where you have Department of Defense and other officials that are clamoring for higher caliber students, higher caliber recruits, and the percentage of children entering has significantly fallen in their capabilities. It's not that there aren't students available if they so choose to go that route, it's qualifications. So we need to focus on getting our kids qualified for life.
Thank you. Mr. Hillery?
Yes, thank you. SEL is not a dirty word. There's some adults who need SEL. We've all gone through a lot over the last couple years. I want to share an anecdote with you that just happened to my wife and I yesterday. My daughter was told that she didn't belong or wasn't liked because of her brown skin. But that's not the message I want to get at. SEL success is her friend who consoled her while she was there and gave her great advice to tell the teacher or to tell your parent. And that's exactly what my wife and I's daughter did when she came home. Something happened to her in school. She came home and she told her daddy and her mommy about it. And the little girl who told her is her friend who has SEL because her parents are teaching her well, her educators are teaching her well how to do that. And how will I help with SEL? I will make sure we pour into our teachers, pour into our educators, so they have empathy, they have sympathy, they know what's going on in their children's lives, they have a caring adult, so when things are going bad for those kids, they teach them how to deal with their emotions in a positive way.
Thank you. Ms.
Social emotional learning. I'm sorry, for those who don't know, SEL means social emotional learning. We apologize for that.
Thank you for that explanation. Ms. Lacohe.
Okay. So the job of our schools is to educate our children so that by the time they leave K through 12, when they go on to their lives, they're going to be able to get successful jobs, you know, whether they're going off to college next, whether they're going to trade school, whatever they're going to do, they'll be able to become productive citizens. As far as social emotional support, ideally, families can provide a lot of that for their kids, you know, so not every child is going to need the same level of social emotional support. Some will need more than others. And for those that need more, that are not getting, you know, everything that they need at home, I would hope that they have, you know, resources available to them and mental health support and emotional support the way that they would need. When we talk about social emotional learning, I'm actually not sure what kind of social emotional learning we're talking about because there's a traditional SEL and there's transformative SEL, and I don't know what our district is doing because they haven't been very transparent about what SEL Rochester is using. I could go on to that in another question perhaps.
All right, thank you. Mr. Patel.
Our Schools are supposed to educate our children, yes, but they do much more. Decades ago, it was determined that a hungry child cannot learn. And so, policies were put in place to feed the children. I would submit to you that a child that's suffering cannot learn. So, you asked the question, what do I see as success? Well, it's a fed and happy child. How do we get there? You know, one of the great things, I love being on the school board, more than I expected. And one of the things that I love about it is going into the schools. And we get a chance as board members to speak with the students in like round tables. Talk about feeding, that's feeding for the soul. And how do we get there? We listen to the kids and we give them what they need.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Can you repeat the question one more time? It's been a while. I just want to make sure I hear the question.
How will you work in partnership with our administrators to support SEL, and what is your definition of success for students?
Okay. So when we define success for our students, it's got to be tangible. We can't define it as they're happy, because what makes one student happy versus another student happy? So that's just where, we've got to get back to tangible, measurable metrics. We have to recognize that in the end, these schools are a place of learning, and we have to focus on academics. But the bigger issue becomes we've become so far down the road of treating everyone as if they have mental concerns. And it is okay to not be okay, but we have to also remind our students it is okay to be okay. We're making the problem when everyone has a mental illness or a mental concern, nobody has one. So we're not actually helping the students that need help. We need to get back to identify what students really need help and make sure we're putting the right resources there. Because again, many of our students do come from very well-supported families and a very well-supported community and are doing just fine. So that's really where the question becomes, what are these programs and what are they actually trying to do? And what we're seeing is a rise in mental health issues that predate the shutdown of the schools. So it doesn't seem like whatever we're doing with these SEL programs is leading to a reduction in mental health issues. We're seeing more concerns, more outbursts. Teachers are talking about not having the ability to hold students accountable in their classrooms. And so where are we doing any service from a tangible standpoint that we're actually making the mental health of students better or them academically better?
And Ms. Alspach.
The goal of education is to create a happy, successful adult who is functioning at the best possible level and doing something that makes them benefit society plus also makes them happy. So I would disagree with you that happiness is important to our mental health and our success as adults. Now, what that looks like to many people is going to be different. What it looked like to me is doing a lot of graduate work. Oh, Lord, was I one of those people that went to college. And I had that vision for my children. But what it looked like for my two sons was serving our country. And I'm a proud military mom of 2 people right now, which surprised me. And what it looked like for each of my students when I was a special education teacher was different. And our goal was to get them to be the happiest, most independent they each could individually be. How we do that is we engage with empathy, and we engage with multiple paths. We support CTE. We support STEM education. We realize that college is a path, but we also realize that there are trade schools. My son keeps telling me, Mom, I'm going to be a master mechanic and make 6 figures when I get out of the Air Force. So what success looks like is a happy, successful adult, and our SEL programs support that so that they can get there. We need to fill their needs and build the path so that each individual student can find their way to be a contributing member of society.
And we have our next question from...
All right, I want to rebuttal real quick. I just want to say, no one is questioning we want happy people. We all want to be happy. I'm just saying that cannot be a metric in which we measure the school's success by. That is the only clarification. No one is saying we don't want kids to be happy or we want all of us to be happy.
And our next question from the audience, and the first respondent who was scheduled to be Mr. Hillery.
Well, actually, I have a question.
microphone cut out.
Like the other two questioners, but your comment about 3 candidates being supported by the teachers prompted my question. It's been an area of interest of mine ever since I was the president of student body in college and saw the students' position suffer at the hands of collective bargaining because the students didn't have a seat at the bargaining table. And I see the school board as being somewhat like an employer, and the teachers' union as being a somewhat adverse organization. And I guess my question to you is, as schools across America were thinking of, that parents across America wanted their kids to return to school because all the signs were pointing that they could, was there any tension between the school board and the union as to whether we should or should not come back to work? And if so, does that mean that being endorsed by the teachers union is a good thing?
Well, first off, I want to share that I was not on the board at that time when those decisions were being made, but my understanding of the circumstances were that as our school board, our administration, and our teachers union operate regularly in complete collaboration and partnership in an ongoing positive way, that they were having those discussions. And my understanding is that when our teachers were surveyed on this particular point at various points in the COVID or in the pandemic process, our administration and our board supported what the majority of them wanted as far as that went, and honored what the public health officials were recommending at that time. So there were many variables, a lot of uncertainty, and these were hard decisions to make. And I believe everybody did the best they could at the time with the information they had. It's easy to look back now and say, oh, we could have done this or we should have done that. At the time, I give them grace. That's what I give them. I give them grace and gratitude. Every stakeholder that was involved in that decision was making an impossible decision between really unfortunate, options, right? There were no ideal options in that scenario. And I'm really proud of the work our district does in terms of the relationship between our teachers union, our paraprofessionals union, our office personnel union, and our school board members and our administration. The relationships there are very strong, and there's a lot of trust there, and the conversations are constant, ongoing. We're constantly
and if you could
engaging.
Wrap up, please.
So I think that might be a different scenario than the one that you experienced.
And do all of the candidates wish to respond to this question? Okay, then we'll take it in rotation and start with Mr. Hillery.
Thank you for your question. I think it was asking about why the union was supporting us. There was an extensive process, questionnaire, and interview process. I think the union thought that when it's time to negotiate with the district, they felt the people they recommended, it would be the less contentious of the three. It would be a good starting point for when we go down the road. I want to say, if and when I become a school board member, I will make the best decision for the district. Some of those decisions may upset the union. Some of those decisions may please the union. But what I want to get to is the decisions that I will make when I'm on school board is how we can help our students. How we can help our students.
Thank you, Ms. Lacohe.
So, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I can't.
Given I ask this because I'm a recently retired management labor lawyer. Mm-hmm. And there's always tension between people who are charged with running the operation and a union. in many, many, many different ways. And so from my standpoint, having dealt with hundreds, if not thousands of employers over 40 years, I wouldn't necessarily think it's a good thing to be endorsed by a teachers union. And I say, Ms. Gupta, it sounds to me like we surveyed the teachers, and the teachers decided what they wanted, and you went along with that.
Well, first of all, what I said was I wasn't on the board at the time when those decisions were made. And I also said that what I understood went on, right, that the process involved was a survey getting feedback from teachers who are the backbone of our district. So absolutely, you would need their input to understand what directions you might go in. You wouldn't want to force your teachers to come back if the majority of them are not ready to do that.
Ms. Gupta,
what would that result in
we have
for
to
our
wrap that
district?
up for a 30-second rebuttal.
Okay. Well, now I remember this question. So, yeah, I also have been a little bit confused about the relationship with the board and the MEA. So I agree with you on that point. I actually didn't seek the teachers union's endorsement. I wrote back and told them that if I were to get elected to the board, I hope to collaborate with them afterwards. But I've been confused about the teachers union and how they're really serving the needs of the teachers. Did you know that back in 2020, they gave teachers 1% raises, and they gave upper-level administrators in our district 10 to 12% raises? I wondered about the discrepancy there, too. Why didn't we take care of our teachers first before giving administrators these raises? And I've noticed that the teachers union is promoting other kinds of things that seem to be outside their lane. And I've heard from many teachers who've been disappointed with the way the teachers union has been instructing them to do things. So I'm not quite sure. I'm confused also about the relationship with the teachers union and our board. I think that relationship isn't quite right either.
Mr. Patel?
Thank you, and thank you for asking the question. It's true that I was endorsed by the three groups representing our teachers, our paraprofessionals, and other staff. I'm proud of that. The people that are caring for our children think I should continue. But I have to give you a nod, sir. We have something in common. I'm on the management side, and as I'm a lawyer as well, and I agree that at times, when one side or one party has too much power, bad things can happen. You mentioned tension. Not all tension is bad. Sometimes tension between two strong groups can create a harmonious and healthy outcome. So as a board member, as a member of management, whether I'm on one side or the other, what we're looking for is harmony amongst the workers and the people that manage them. And a strong and effective and fair collectively bargained group gives that opportunity. Not to mention, the union is a great way for the management to understand what the workers are thinking and feeling.
Mr. Weaver?
So I work in manufacturing. I work in the UAW environment. So I was someone that returned to work in April of 2020 to put our plan back in place to return to work. The difference between what we did with the UAW and what we saw with Rochester was what the goal was. Our union understood that we needed to make cars to make money for the business to run. The union and the district forgot we needed to educate children. That is what happened. And so I actually did interview with the MEA. I've made my interview completely public. MEA asked me specifically, would there be any concerns if they endorsed me? And I asked them, why would that be? I would expect you to endorse me because I'm advocating for transparency and accountability and clear policies that protect our teachers, that make sure that they are empowered. So yes, the union is not advocating for the best interest of the students and definitely not in the best interest of the teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Alspach?
As an executive director, I work with our teachers union in the district I'm employed in quite often. We all have a similar goal of wanting what's best for the children and wanting to educate them and wanting to give them the best education possible. But the union does have a different perspective, and I consider them partners in that. And they're often when I engage with them and we come up with solutions together so that we can build consensus so that we're all moving together. We may have a different perspective, we may have a different constituency we're looking out for, but I think it's important to work with all stakeholders, and teachers are very important stakeholders in our districts.
Thank you, and we're ready for...
May I just rebut just very briefly? I can't release the interview because I didn't tape it, but I could tell you what I said, which is what I said about 30 seconds ago.
So we can release mine, you can go see it, and then I would like all of you guys to just answer the questions publicly, the same exact ones.
And we have a question from the audience.
Excuse me, I didn't have a chance to answer that question.
30 seconds, please.
So when I look back at what happened, and I think we all know what happened during COVID, everything got politicized. It didn't matter if you were going to school, going to work, or just turning a light switch on. Everything got politicized, and our children suffered. So now we have a generational issue that we're going to have to address to help them catch up. I would work with the teachers and look at some of the other systems around the public education system that went back to school, and their kids are up there.
Good evening, RCS candidates. Thank you very much for making your time to meet with us tonight. My name is Rachel Campbell. I am a 30-year resident of Rochester Hills, and I am also a naturalized citizen of the United States. When it comes to public education, I have a rather mixed experience. Growing up, I went to public schools in 3 different countries, including the United States. I currently work in the automotive industry, and the question I am going to ask you stems from these experiences. In recent years, I have been working with groups of very talented engineers engaged in developing next-generation automotive products. These individuals work with cutting-edge technology to make possible many advanced features in future cars. I would like to be able to say, I look forward to seeing your children take on exciting work like this in such an exciting field. I do fear, however, that the outlook is not so bright to me. Why? Here are the reasons. One,
Excuse me, if we have very limited time, can you get to your questions?
yes, but I have to, okay, I have to state this fact. Okay, let me, so this is data. A quick sampling of one of my local teams shows that just over 10% are born Americans, 20% are immigrants such as myself who have received partially or fully their basic education outside the U.S., and the rest are all H-1B visa holders.
I respectfully have to ask if you have a question to put to the panel.
Okay, I hope you know what you mean, what's meant by H-1B visas. Yep. So basically what the question is this. Let's see, so use it. Basically, I like to know, so basically what I'm trying to say is over 2/3 of this high-tech workforce is comprised of non-U.S. citizens.
That's correct.
So, given that, what is your vision? What is your vision for the future of RCS in preparing its students to become competitive in the job market that's becoming increasingly more global, so that the students will be competing with these engineers from outside?
And we will start with Ms. Litkouhi.
Okay. Yeah, what you're talking about is really important because you're right, we're competing on a global level. So we do have to consider that. And this is one of the reasons why we really need to restore our focus on academic excellence and preparing our kids in the way that we need to. So for instance, we should offer opportunities in STEM. We should offer advanced classes in our district. I was very disappointed when RCS got rid of 6th and 7th grade advanced language arts, for instance, in January of 2020. And unfortunately, our administration made this decision without a vote from the Board of Education, which they should have, and with some very weak rationales. They said that advanced tracks cause inequities for students, that advanced tracks cause undue stress on students, that advanced tracks make other kids who are not in the advanced classes have a lower perception of themselves. Those rationales didn't make much sense to me. I asked them if they had any sort of data that they collected. They said they did student interviews. So they sent me a video of those student interviews. And strangely enough, the video they sent was the ALA promotional video, where all of the students and the teachers in the video were talking about the benefits of advanced language arts and how much they love the class and all of that. So it didn't really make much sense. So we need to preserve our advanced classes. Those rationales could be applied to any advanced classes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Patel.
I agree with you. We need more STEM and focus on STEM because it's a technological world. We have something in common. I work at a technology company nearby, and I work with a lot of people that are out here on visas. But just one point, the people that are here for 3 and 4 years on visas, they live in our community mostly. And you know where they send their kids? Right here, Rochester schools. So I'm proud of that, by the way. But your point's a good one. And we can't just focus on technology and advanced technology either, right? We need people that can work the lines, that can do trades. We need everything. And so over the summer, we had an innovation, new class, innovation over the summer, and the students presented their ideas. And so yes, agreed.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver.
So my undergrad from Western Michigan University, I majored in political science, I minored in history. So I'm going to take a little bit different spin on this question. This is why we really need to get back to teaching real history, because that's where we stopped teaching history right a long time ago, even before it became political. We just didn't make it important. The world is, there's always going to be someone out there competing. And that's what we're missing. We're missing teaching the grit to our kids, that work, that work ethic is what we're starting to miss. Because again, we want to make sure they're always happy. That's the part. People come to this country for the opportunities that it has, and they see that, and they work for them. And so my grandmother's a first-generation immigrant from Japan. I remember hearing some of the stories growing up of just the different culture part of it. And that's what we've lost a little bit, and that's what we got to get back to. But it really goes back to the history part, is the world is, always will be, one where someone is trying to compete. There will always be a superpower in the world, and so it's, again, that's just the reality, and we're losing that competitive edge where we compete and we teach our kids to compete ethically, to win with honor, and learn from their defeats. We got to get back to that and really build the character of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Alspaugh.
Well, thank you, Ms. Campbell, for your question. I do think it's a very important one. How do we teach our children to be globally competitive? Well, Ms. Gupta and I'm sure she's going to mention this, we are both robotics coaches. So my children have left the RCS, graduated 6 years ago, and I am still at Stony Creek High School every single week working on the robotics team. These are AP kids that are getting really good educations and taking all of those academics, or they're kids that are going over to OTEC and getting a real hands-on experience. But then in robotics, what we're teaching them is we're teaching them grit and how to fail and how to get back up and how to be globally competitive. We're part of a global, when we go to our world competitions, they meet people from other countries. So we teach them to be globally competitive by starting with the foundation of good knowledge and good curriculum, and then taking that to an exciting level of actually having them apply it. One of the best moments in one of the best times I had as a robotics coach was when the girls were figuring out how to put a ball inside of a box, and they're like, oh, wait, geometry, I can use this. And they were just to see the light bulb in their head, realizing that what they had learned in math class could actually be used to do our robot, and then having them compete and having them struggle through that and have success. I think those are the skills that STEM programs can teach them to be globally competitive.
Ms. Gupta.
Yeah, I am all for more STEM education, and that is reflected in the fact that for the past 7 years I spend about 15 to 20 hours of my week voluntarily managing the Rochester High School robotics team that my son was a part of, graduated in 2020, but somehow we still haven't. We're still there. And I'm so proud of the work that we've done with our students there and in the district. So just a couple of highlights. In our time managing the team, our high school team has started and oversees through mentoring and providing grant support, 80 additional Lego League teams throughout our district at the elementary level, and middle school programs at all of our middle school, at 3 of our middle schools. Our team has 65 students on it. They learn electrical programming, they learn machining, mechanical, they learn how to run a lathe, they learn how to CAD design. I don't really know what any of these things mean because I'm a social worker, but they sound really impressive to me. So, and I just want to say, it is a labor of love, but when you see kids come in as a 9th grader and say, oh, I'll just help on the business side, I'm more of an artsy person, but then they graduate from high school and go on to college and become an electrical engineer, and that's not everybody's path or everyone's story, and that's okay, but that's pretty amazing, and we have that, and I'm proud to say that what we've prioritized on our team with our students is making lifelong connections with kids throughout their life that they can come back to.
Thank you. Mr. Talluto.
So I'm going to disagree a little bit with most of the responses that you've heard. Having consulted for companies around the world, including companies that had engineering departments in Haifa, Israel, in London, on the West Coast, in Silicon Valley, it's not enough to get our kids into STEM. They need to be able to be taught how to think, right? It is how do you apply what it is that you've learned, and how do you get creative in the application? Because we talk a lot in public education about equity and equality, and what these kids are not hearing is our education system is a meritocracy, because when you leave and you go out into the world and you're designing cars and airplanes, the best product at the best price with the best function is going to win. We need to teach these kids how to think. I consulted for a Chinese company one time, scared the living daylights out of me, because the guy that was my guide had a bachelor's and 2 masters in engineering, and he could not qualify for the engineering department in his own company that had 7,500 PhDs in that company. And it's the way they're taught to think.
Candidates, we're going to change the format just a little, and because there's a lot of people who want to ask questions, so we're not going to have rebuttals, if you don't mind. And if I could have the people line up over here, this seems to be where we can get a little bit better sound quality.
Probably don't need a mic.
Actually, if I could answer the question, Ms. Litkouhi went first, and I am number 6. Sorry.
Go ahead.
The last one. Thank you.
My apologies.
That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. I won't take up much time with this question. STEM is incredibly important. I hope my daughters do Girls Who Code, and we have the Lego League, we have robotics, but STEM, some kids don't want to do STEM.
Yeah.
I majored in sociology and substance abuse, right? Much to my mother's chagrin, who was an engineer. She didn't like it that I went through it, but we have to make sure we have plenty of programs for the kids who want the programs. The kids who want STEM, they should go to STEM. The kids who want social studies, we should push them to social studies. The kids who want to do science, we should make sure they focus on science. STEM is great, and our world is evolving, but we still need plenty of other professions, and we want to make sure we teach our kids how to do those professions.
Abraham Lincoln said that a government that does not trust its society is a government that's up to no good. I have a question. My question is, why do you guys not trust the parents of the students who you claim to teach? Jessica, you want to start?
I would just say that I don't agree with the statement. I don't know where you would get that information from, that I don't trust the parents that we're seeking to serve. What is your evidence of that?
You keep everything under lock and key. You're very closed off as far as the information, as far as the curriculum, as far as even me going into the class to see my children. I have, even your brand new building is kept under lock and key with security guards. Are you not supposed to be open to the public?
We are open to the public. We do have security because unfortunately there have been some pretty egregious threats made to members of our administration, our board, and our employees, so we have a responsibility to keep them safe. But you can certainly enter any of those buildings through the proper channels by walking through the door, signing in like everybody else does.
Did anyone else wish to respond to this question?
Yes, I would like to, if I could.
Okay, Mr. Hillery?
I'm a parent in the district here, and I have never once thought that I wasn't trusted, that I wasn't a part of my kids' education. Not once.
Okay, thank you. And the next resident?
Could I respond to the question as well?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand raised. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I think that the question perhaps is speaking to some of the lack of transparency that parents have been feeling in the district. I think that we really should trust parents, of course, on the whole, in our district, and we shouldn't have this lack of transparency. We've had problems with parents finding out information about what's being taught to students, how funds are spent, what processes we follow, even who's on district committees that make important decisions for the district. Parents have had to do things, they've been instructed to send public records requests for simple information. Some of it could easily be posted on the district's website. If the district was willing to make some of those changes and post information to the website, show people freely information if they have questions and talk and have those honest conversations, I think it would do a lot to help restore trust with parents so that parents didn't feel angry, didn't come in with this hostility, and it would do a lot to just repair some of the division that's going on in the community.
Any other candidates who have not already responded?
Yes.
Mr. Talluto?
Yes. So in regards to trust, the way to resolve that is with transparency. So one of the policies that I will seek when I get on the board is a transparency policy that addresses parental access to everything that goes into those classrooms for those children to use. No more FOIAs. You want to see your kid's curriculum, you get access. Get the books, get the training materials, get the study guides, but parents, and this is according to Michigan law, MCL 380, you as parents and guardians are the responsible party for your children's education, and every time somebody at the school says submit a FOIA request when you ask to see your kid's material, that's a violation of the law. It says right in there, you have the right to access all of their curriculum, all of their educational material, period. No discussion.
Ms. Gupta, had you responded to this question?
No, I have not.
Okay, then go ahead, please.
Thank you. Did I?
Okay, I had you down as you
sorry,
had.
I did.
Okay, thank you.
I forgot that was the
All
same
right,
question, so.
and we're ready for the next question from the resident.
With the local, state, and national focus on the banning of select books in some school districts and libraries, would you each please comment on the role you think the school board can take in that and how you see going forward if you're elected?
And let's start with Mr. Patel.
The district has a procedure to review and remove questionable materials. Parents also have the option, by the way, of selecting materials that they don't find suitable. But I'm not for banning books. I'm here to expand minds, not close them. So an access to information is what is the key to freedom, in my opinion.
Mr. Weaver?
We need to start this conversation is one that we really have to have the open and honest conversation. There's a lot of nuance here. I have not heard anybody in our community call for banning of any books. To ban a book means to remove it from circulation. So let's have an honest conversation of what we're talking about. People want standards in place. So yes, we should have clear standards that are in place to make sure everyone knows what is and is not available. This notion that, a parent can just opt out. Well, if you don't know something is there, how do you opt something out? So this is where parents are bringing up concerns, and we should be able to hear them out and understand what is going on. So also the notion that we don't currently have standards. We do not allow every single book into the library. We don't allow every single book into a classroom. So this, again, is where we have to be able to talk, hear what people are bringing up. So there are questions around specifically sexually explicit material. So why can't we just have that conversation and see where it's at and see what they're talking about instead of, again, defaulting to, oh, you're trying to ban a book. No, let's just be honest with the conversation and realize there's more to it than just that simple part. Like, we're all intelligent people. We're all committed to trying to do the right thing. And again, there's a difference between in a classroom, in a library, and curriculum. That's the nuance we have to be able to start having these conversations at.
And Ms. Alspaugh.
Thank you so much. My first degree is in English literature, so I am a lover of books. I think our libraries need to be full of rich and diverse books that represent our entire community and represent different points of view. One of the students that I know through Adams High School has an organization called Girls of the Crescent, where they're a charity to get books about Muslim girls into schools so that Muslim girls can see themselves in our libraries. And I think it's important for people to see themselves in our libraries. Do we need to apply common sense standards? Yes, we do. And I, as a candidate, have been asked many times about sexually explicit books and these books that are in the library. But I've never heard anyone actually mention a title. So I think we do need to have that conversation. So I think we need to have that conversation, and we need to look at those and apply common sense standards. But we do need to keep our libraries being rich and diverse.
Ms. Gupta.
Yes, I would echo a lot of the same sentiments that Dr. Alspach and Mr. Patel have shared on this issue. We do have a policy or a protocol in place as a district that is has a committee where parents are represented, our literary experts are represented, and where there's a process if a parent feels like there's a book available that's not age appropriate, or it's not available in a way that, whether you want them to be able to access it right off the shelf or from the media specialist. These are conversations that can be had through this process and reviewed. I'm generally not a big fan of censorship, but I do agree with having age-appropriate materials available for kids. And of course, that's a very subjective, individualized idea, right? So we have a very large and diverse community. We serve almost 15,000 students. So what is considered sexually explicit by one person is going to be advocated to have on the shelf by another family. So, and everything in between. And, people can clutch their pearls if we want to about that, but that's a reality. And so that's why you have a representative group that can make the decision on behalf of the district.
Mr. Talluto.
So I guess a violent rape scene is acceptable in Rochester schools. That just happened. That material was just used in a classroom last week at Stony Creek. Here's the thing, and it would be no surprise, I think, if people would say I'm a little on the conservative side. Forget that, because I've had conversations with left of center parents, and when you actually start showing them the titles and the content of some of these books, even liberal parents would say, oh, no, you don't put that in front of my kids. And I'll just say that. There's titles in our libraries. They've been cataloged. We know the names of the books, and we know the authors, and we know the content. And if you can't leave that on your coffee table when your mother, your grandmother, your priest, your pastor, if they come over for a visit and you can't put that book on the coffee table, what is it doing in front of these young minds, right? There's millions, there are millions of literary works that are available to educate the minds of these children. They don't need to have rape scenes and adult on child and all kinds of stuff in their minds in the classroom. We're better than that.
Thank you. And I do want to remind the audience that you are to refrain from any vocal or applause while the candidates are making their statements. And we have Mr. Hillery.
Thank you. So there may be some explicit books in our libraries, no doubt. But our kids are going through explicit things. 25% of girls end up being raped. We learned that in college. When you look to your left, you look to your right, one of them has happened to. If someone can read about it and know how horrible it is for those girls to have to go through that, maybe they can gain empathy. Maybe if a boy sees that, he thinks twice about it. Maybe if someone reads something explicit in a book, they can talk to their friends about it so people know what happens. Bad things happen in this world. Our kids need to know about it. Whether you want to read it or I want to read it, kids should have the right to see what's going on. Because guess what? When they turn 18 and they fly out into the world, things are going to happen to them. They need to read about stuff that's happening in this world so they can protect themselves against it, so they can protect their friends against it, so they can protect their family against it. In addition, I think we should trust our teachers. We should trust our librarians. They know, they're the trained educators. They went to school for, all of our teachers went to school for 4, 8, 12 years. They know what these books are about. They know what should be in our buildings, what our kids should be learning. I think we should trust them.
And Ms. Lacohe.
Okay, so yeah, this is not really a talk so much about banning books as it is about library standards. So I guess the real question here is, should kids have access to sexually explicit books in school? Or should parents have control over how their kids are going to experience that kind of information? So it's normal to curate school libraries for age-appropriate material. Just like in a medical library, you're not going to find every type of book that exists in the world. In a school library, it will be age-appropriate material. We have filters on the kids' laptops to filter out pornography. Shouldn't we be filtering out pornography in non-digital materials as well? This has nothing to do with diverse books. I am totally in favor of getting exposed to multiple different viewpoints. That's healthy. That's how we can teach that critical thinking that's going to help kids compete in the world. So it has nothing to do with that. What I've heard parents complain about is pictures of naked people giving each other sex that you can see right in the books. These drippy, graphic descriptions of sexual rape and incest scenes. Some parents don't want their kids to have access to that material. Some parents do. The question is, does it need to be in an educational institution, or is that something that parents should provide to their kids on their own time if they would like their kids to be exposed to that material?
Thank you. And our next question.
I'm a 12-year, my family and I are 12-year residents of Rochester, and I was stunned to go to that March meeting and learn what I learned about the school board and what they had accomplished in going after parents. That's why I'm here tonight. But I do have a reality-based question. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm retired federal law enforcement of more than 40 years. And the reality is you have to shape, just like in the military, you shape the battlefield. In education, you need to shape the future, right? So what's coming across the country in a number of districts, quite a few actually across the country? Drag queen shows, transgender, gender pronouns. What kind of time are you going to give to that?
And let's start with Mr. Weaver.
Can you clarify real quick what you mean, what kind of time you're going to give to that? I just was wanting to clarify when you say what kind of time.
What kind of time, if any, are you going to give to that, to those issues?
Okay.
Did I make it clear?
Yep, all right. So the gender ideology part of it, that is absolutely something I've asked the district for. What is their policy? What if their teachers are asking students for their pronouns? Teachers are asking if they can share that information with other people, including their parents. If our district is going to have a policy that a student can change their gender and then they're going to withhold that from parents, that I find to be mind-blowing. And I want to share that my wife is a high school, public school teacher. Not at RCS. But so this, and the first thing she said when we had this conversation is, if my district is going to allow that to happen, they better put it in writing. Because our teachers are going to be the ones that end up getting sued, get held responsible when this goes sideways. We are talking about, technically, it is a medical diagnosis. And that is something that our teachers should not be having put on their plate without the protection of the district saying that they have vetted it through legal, through in having that conversation that says they are following a process and policy. And I've asked our district for it, and I couldn't even get a response. They don't reply to the email. They don't reach back out. So this conversation is definitely one that we as a community need to have, and until it is vetted, it should not, the ideology should not be being taught to our students.
Ms. Alspach?
So I think the question revolves around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what type of time would I give to that. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are important elements, and they are important to include. We do need to have a policy, and parents should be in the know. However, I have a very personal experience with two students I know that have been in high school recently. A person that transitioned, and the group that they were part of was very welcoming and really accepted her as who she wanted to be and who she felt she was on the inside. And as a result, that student flourished, got college scholarships, and did very well. I know of another student that wanted to transition, and the group didn't accept him very well. And as a result, that student had a lot of mental health problems. And I think we need to create spaces where those students can be safe. Because when he wasn't accepted, it became an almost life-threatening mental health situation. Forgive me for getting upset, but I think we need to make spaces for those students to feel comfortable.
Ms. Gupta?
Yeah, I want to echo what Dr. Alspach just said, that whether it makes us uncomfortable to think about or not, there are gay kids in our district and in our community. There are trans kids in our district and in our community, and they deserve to be loved, valued, included, and cherished just like every other student. As a mental health provider, this is a large part of the student group that I serve and have served over the years in my practice. And I can tell you, when you see their stories up close, as I have, there is not one part of you that can come away from that not feeling immensely affected by the challenges they face, not because of their internal struggle, that's part of it, but more so because of the stigma and the shaming that they experience by the world around them. And when people minimize their experiences and say, oh, they don't, that they shouldn't be able to say how they want to be referred to, whether it's a pronoun or a name, or that it's some sort of ideological stint, that's very minimizing. And what the data tells us about this group of students is that they are at highest risk, most vulnerable of significant mental health issues, including suicide and self-harm. So I see that as my responsibility as a school board member to model what it looks like to be inclusive, safe, and a loving place for those students and all students, and not to be part of demonizing or minimizing those experiences or contributing in any way to shaming those students or their families.
Mr. Talluto?
Yeah, so I do agree with much of what has been said up here, and this is not about denigrating any student or shaming them or anything. Every child, every person has the right to be loved and accepted. The issue that's happening in school systems all across America, this is not unique, it's happening all over, is the education system believing it is their right to have conversations and actions with students without the parents' knowledge or consent. That is extremely dangerous. Some of the drugs that are being used in transition is killing kids, over 6,000 dead, 42,000 adverse reactions in the VAERS database that's housed by our own federal government, of which 25,000 of those are considered serious. Parents are the guardians and they have the rights and responsibilities. Teachers are reporting entities. If there's something going on with a child, they need to go to the parents. If that's not possible, then go to Human Services. But
thank you. Mr. Hillery.
Thanks. When I talk to kids about this issue, this is an adult issue. Most kids who I talk to who are 18 years and younger, they embrace their gay friends. They embrace their trans friends. They really, really do. I've only heard us adults who are bringing this to our attention. As you may or may not know, there are plenty of kids in our district who cannot go home and be their true self with their parent. They just can't. Unfortunately, they can't. School, for some of them, is the only place where they can be who they are. And I don't think it's too far of a stretch to call someone by the name that they prefer so they can learn and they can feel like themselves for the 7 hours that they're at school. Because a lot of them have to go home and transition to the person that their parents want them to be. These kids are going to go out into the real world one day, so we need to support them so they're ready to attack that world.
Ms. Lacohe.
Well, I have enormous compassion for any child who's struggling with their identity, who's going through something mental health-wise. Obviously, parents need to be involved in those kinds of decisions. The overwhelming majority of parents are going to love their kids more than anyone else in the world. They're going to advocate for their kids. They're going to want the best for their kids. Of course, in situations where you suspect abuse or anything of that nature, we have protocols in place for that. And hopefully the school would follow those protocols. But parents love their kids, and they should be involved in those decisions. We need to make sure in our schools that we treat all kids with kindness and respect. We inform their parents, help them get the mental health support that they need. And if there's bullying that takes place, that there's consequences for that bullying to deter bullying from happening. As far as gender ideology, that's not really a topic that schools should be in the business of teaching. They should be focusing back on academics.
Mr. Patel.
I appreciate the service of the person who asked the question. Although I don't find the analogy helpful, I don't think our schools should be a battleground, and I don't think there's some force of nefarious, gay people trying to take over our schools. What I do know is that our schools should be a safe place and an inclusive place for all our students. And what I can't tolerate is the thought that any one of our 15,000 students can't find a home here.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'd like to pose this question to Joe first, and then everyone join. Superintendent Shaner has filed police reports against parents because he doesn't like their opinion.
You're cutting out.
We've seen the superintendent and deputy superintendent call parents employers because they do not like their opinions. With all of this occurring, how are you able to rate Shaner as highly effective as a superintendent? And how would the rest of you rate Shaner, knowing all of this?
The superintendent's, yes, thank you. The superintendent's review was in March, early in the year, before some things were learned. But let me say this, by any objective measure, and let me also say that I was new to the board. And so and we have one employee, the superintendent, not any other employees, by the way. So by any objective measure, finances, the grades, the scores, the surveys of the staff, by any objective measure, the school district is doing well. And so when evaluating an employee based on performance, you look at the facts of how the school district is doing. Now, as it's not known, and I wasn't on the board when police reports were filed, but by the way, any threats need to be treated seriously, and the police are there for that purpose. But what I can tell you is that of any board member, I'm the only one who proposed reasonable solutions to try to bring the community together on this point. So I stand behind my highly effective rating for the reasons I just stated. I stand behind every action I've taken since. And if I'm reelected, I'm going to continue to build the independence of the board and push for policies that give parents the comfort that they can make complaints, raise issues without the fear of retaliation.
Mr. Weaver.
So the only issue with the response we just heard was not one tangible metric was listed in the review for Dr. Shaner. One of my commitments in moving to the board is that the position would have listed out what are the actual expectations what are the measures, so that the district and everyone part of it would know exactly what are the goals that have to be achieved. What are those scores? So we know if I hit this score, I get this. If I get that score, almost all of us in our professional world have dealt with an end-of-year review, and we have goals. So the idea that there's all these goals and facts, but none of them are known to anybody, and when we give the rating, we just say, oh, it's highly effective. When, no, the information was all public knowledge of what was going on. If we have, as trustees, that is our jobs to be the eyes and ears to the community. So if trustees don't know that, then we're really missing something. So I'm committed to making sure that we have that transparency, that we know when we say someone's highly effective, what are the tangible metrics they have to meet to get that? And if they don't meet it, what actions are we taking to get them there? Because that's the original goal of any corrective action process, is to improve the performance. Accountability does not mean everyone gets fired at any time. But again, we got to start getting back to where you're actually accountable for the actions of people and to tangible metrics, not just making sure that they're happy.
Ms. Alspaugh.
So I think if we look at our metrics that we can find on My School data, our school district is doing well. We are beating statewide and county averages. So that is an objective measure that we can say that we're doing well at. Does that mean we need to improve things? Yes, we still need to improve things, and there's still room for improvement. We can improve the transparency and communication. To speak to the police report issue, I do not know the details of that, so I can't tell you whether I agree or disagree with it, but I can tell you that I think constructive criticism of our district is fair, that parents have the right to speak their mind, they have a voice, they're important stakeholders, but there are lines where that, and I don't know what that situation with the details. So, but I do think for constructive criticism, there shouldn't be any consequences.
Ms. Gupta.
Yeah, I would agree that I don't think any parent should be retaliated against in any way for expressing a grievance or a concern or a disagreement with the district. As somebody who did that for many years, very openly, I wouldn't have wanted to have that sort of, any sort of negative treatment come to me or my children. And it's something that I'm constantly asking questions about as a new board member because I want to understand that better. But at the same time, across all metrics, we're doing well. And so to the point of what are those metrics? What are the measurable objectives that we're using to measure a superintendent in an evaluation? That is publicly available already on our website. I looked it over before I threw my name in the hat to be chosen on the board to get an idea what I'd be up for, in the role. So anyone can go on our website, and that's very transparently available to anyone to look at what measures are used in the superintendent's evaluation to figure out, whether or not he or she is performing, at whatever rating. So I'm committed to that process with the information that I have before me at the time when we're doing it.
Thank you. Mr. Talluto.
So this is one of the key issues that brought me to the decision point to run in the first place, is what I perceive to be the complete lack of governance and leadership in the relationship between the superintendent and the board. It just a lack of leadership and governance. At no time, right? So this superintendent and his staff violated the First Amendment rights of a parent, got her fired from a job, responsible for multiple letters going out to other parents, cease and desist on legal letterhead, having sheriffs dispatched to people's house, and now there's a second lawsuit against the district, and I have not heard a single board member offer a proposal to, or a motion to put a letter of censure or reprimand in this superintendent's portfolio. Not one letter of reprimand. And by the way, I did FOIA the school district's errors and omissions policy, and it's blatant violation of the exclusion clause in their contract for dishonest, fraudulent, criminal, or malicious acts damages arising out of intentional, dishonest, fraudulent, criminal, or malicious act, error, or omission. And there's a
And if you
lawyer
could
on the
wrap
board,
up, please,
too.
Mr. Talluto. Thank you. Mr. Hillery?
Yeah, thank you. When I'm elected to the school board, I will take all information about the superintendent into consideration when it comes to evaluating. I believe that retaliation should not be tolerated. I believe that getting into the fray when people are upset is not a good idea. And I always hearken back to what we all learned when we were kids. Do unto others as you would do unto you.
Ms. Lacohe?
Okay, so regarding giving Superintendent Shaner a highly effective rating. In recent court depositions, he admitted to personally calling parents' employers to complain about them. He's also presided over a deputy superintendent who called a parent's employer to complain about that parent, and he gave no disciplinary action. He's also presiding over other administrators who admitted to spending 60 to 70% of their time compiling dissenting parents' social media posts, and there's no disciplinary action. At worst, that's a frivolous waste of taxpayer dollars, in my opinion. At best, it's a frivolous waste of taxpayer dollars. At worst, it's quashing parents from being able to speak their views. If there are no consequences in place for any of these actions, how can we expect parents to feel confident that this won't happen again? Just like with bullying, if there are no consequences, there's no disincentive for the bully to stop. So that's my answer to that question.
Thank you. And this will have to be our last question this evening.
Thank you. So earlier this year, earlier this year, there were a number of parents that came to the board to express how concerned they were about these books with sexual imagery and titillating words in some of the high schools. And immediately there was a parent organization, the DEIPN, who came out and published on social media a lengthy letter where they claimed that these parents were against diversity, equity, and inclusion. They were against LGBTQ. They were against. So they completely twisted the words of the feedback that was coming out, that people were concerned, including myself, about sexual imagery. And then a board member published that DPEIN manifesto out to their webpage, and then they published it to the Democrat Party webpage. So there's two things here. One is, I would like to direct this question to Jessica and to Joe. I'm finding that because this information and a call to action to come and tell the board you support sexual imagery only went to the Democrat Party websites, that means that board member acted very partisan. And I want to know how you believe that you should act or will act in your role. Do you believe that you should be partisan and only post things to one party? That's one. And then secondly is I asked the board to please tell me how the parents, what process you will consider to put in place so parents on both sides of the line can come together and discuss with school leadership, librarians, what process can we look at these books and make decisions as a team? And one of you people up there did respond to me, but you completely ignored my question. And I never got any response from the board. So I'd like to know what your plans are to respond to my question and about being partisan once you join the board. Jessica and Joe.
Yeah, so the board position is a nonpartisan role, and I'm committed to that. So when we're governing or we're overseeing the work of the district, you're not supposed to bring in your political biases, or at least try to be aware of any kind of ideological biases you might be bringing to the table and try to weed those out. But we bring ourselves with us wherever we go, and so you have to do work at that. And you have to work in consensus with the whole board. Bylaws and handbook are focused on consensus building. And why is that? It's because you can't run an efficient district without being able to come to some compromise and negotiation in quick time on decisions that need to be made. And so I'm committed to that process. I'm committed to doing that in a nonpartisan way. I can't speak to the other things that you mentioned about the other groups. I wasn't involved in that. But I am committed to being a nonpartisan member of the school board, as I have been since March, and will continue to if elected. And there was a second part to your question. What was that?
I asked, what specific process are you going to put in place to work with parents on both sides of the line about the books that go into our libraries and are in our libraries with sexual imagery?
Well, thank you for repeating that for me. So there, as I mentioned earlier, we already have a process and a protocol in place that involves a committee that has parent representation on it, as well as literary experts in the district who've been hired because of their experience in this field that they follow national standards to review materials that are being contested, and that is the policy and the protocol that we already have. So that's what I support.
Mr. Patel.
Yeah, the answer to your first question is no. I'm nonpartisan. I'm not a member of any party, and that's how I've conducted myself for the last 14 months, and that's how I'll conduct myself if I'm retained. The answer to your second question is we have a process in place, and it's driven by the experts, librarians, the teachers. There is input. If I'm open, someone send me an email with a tweak to the policy, we'll consider it. But there's a policy in place. So what am I going to do? I'm going to look at the policy and apply it. And if the district doesn't, then I'll raise the question.
And did any of the other candidates wish to respond?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Talluto.
So this does get right back to governance and leadership. And the fact of the matter is that parents and guardians are responsible for their children and need to be treated as such. Okay? So it's one thing to bring in panels of experts, but at the end of the day, if panels of experts say, yeah, this is okay, give it to the kids, and you're horrified of it, and you had no foreknowledge, no opt-out, right? It's too late once it's already happened. So what needs to happen when I get on the board is a policy, a written policy with penalties for violation of violating the parents' rights to see anything and everything that's in their schools that their children are going to be exposed to. And in advance, not like a week before a new book is going to be rolled out. Oh, you got 3 days. No, months ahead. You get, as parents, you get to see what is in that school. And that's under the law. I'm not just up here shooting from the hip. That's Michigan Code 380, right? And same thing under Michigan Code 720 on pornographic and material and delinquency of a minor. Some of the books that have come out of those schools, if my neighbor gave it to one of my grandkids, I could call up Sheriff Bouchard and have him arrested for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And it's in the law, but there's a teacher exception. There's an education exception in the law. That's why it happens.
And Mr. Hillery, did you wish to respond?
No.
Mr. Weaver, you wish to respond?
Yeah. So, can you repeat the first part of your question? I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. Just the partisan part. Okay, I remember. So, this idea of people saying they're nonpartisan, or it comes down to, I've spent the last 2 years engaging with people in our community. I sat down, I've accepted every conversation from anyone that wanted to have it. I've even accepted ones from people sitting at this table that canceled them, because I'm willing to speak to anybody. Because we do have an issue with people feeling scared to raise their voice. That should be a concern to everybody in this room. One of the leaders of the DEIPN, who I am very critical of for very specific reasons, challenged me in the middle of a board meeting, which is a violation of their policy. I was not offended. I accepted his offer to sit down and talk without hesitation. So again, it's time to stop hearing people say they're not bipartisan, they're nonpartisan. It's about what were their actions? What did they do when they had the opportunity to show? And I will go down on that. This is the hill that I am. We've got to start talking to one another. There is so much to all these conversations that have been brought up tonight that we have to talk honestly about. But when people are scared to speak, that is a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Yes.
Yeah, I agree that we need to have honest conversations. We need to partner with parents and we need more transparency, and that really covers a lot of this question. I'm willing to talk with anybody as well. I appreciate a diversity of different views. I think that makes us stronger. And we've got to, as board members, if any of us were to be selected, I think in a situation like this, our first role would be to try to seek input from the community and people that think like you, people that don't think like you, and consider all of these views when you're making your decision. If there's any kind of policy change that's needed, you know, you've got to have a committee of people with different views on that too, that represents our community, you know. If there's a controversial book that's sexually explicit, I suppose maybe the first question you'd ask is, what's the educational value of this book? And if it's determined that there's an educational value to this book for some reason, perhaps it would be helpful to implement some kind of rating system so that parents can opt their kids in or out of sexually explicit material, depending on if they want their kid to have access to that or not. That way, every parent, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, can feel comfortable about what their kid is getting in school.
Thank you. Did you wish to? Thank you. All right, well, thank you, candidates and audience. We will begin our closing statements. The candidates will have 30 seconds to make a closing statement. The order of speaking for this segment will be in reverse of the opening statements. We will begin with the two-year term candidates, starting with Julie Alspaugh.
So thank you very much to the League of Women Voters, and thank you very much to every single one of you who is so committed to spending your time and energy sitting through and asking us questions. I greatly appreciate all the issues and concerns that you raised. My name is Dr. Julie Alspaugh, and I'm running for the two-year term. You can learn more about me by searching Facebook for my campaign page. And my priorities are student learning, building a strong and diverse community, and increasing communication and transparency. And thank you so much for your time.
Andrew Weaver.
So we ultimately, again, I'm going to keep be the broken record here. We've got to acknowledge the problems that we have to be able to fix them. And really, a lot of the solutions to these problems are not that difficult. Transparency and accountability are not buzzwords. Transparency fixes a lot of problems because when people are seen for what they're doing, most people will self-correct. When there are policies and procedures in place, people know where the guidelines are, and then they are empowered. To not acknowledge that there is a broken trust.
Time is up, Mr. Weaver.
It seemed a lot.
Sorry. Joe Patel.
Thank you to the League for hosting this forum. Thank you to the people that are here. When I ran in 2020, there was no one challenging. Now we have a full slate, and we have a full room. And I want to congratulate you and everybody here for taking an interest in your democracy. Whether I'm retained or go home, know this, that participation is what matters. So thank you to League, and good night, and good luck to all of my board in the next 30 days.
Carol Beth Litkouhi.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for providing us this forum to connect with the community. Please reach out if you have more questions or if you'd like to share your ideas with me. I think we can repair some of the divisions in our community if we listen and have honest conversations with each other. So let's stop the decline. Let's restore our focus on academic excellence, transparency, partnership with parents, and accountability. I love Rochester, and I want the best for our schools and the kids who go to them. So I hope you consider letting me serve you on the board. And please vote Carol Beth Litkouhi.
Eddie Hillery.
Thank you to all the participants of tonight's forum. My only goal in this campaign is to help kids. That is it. I want to be a voice for the young Eddie Hillarys of this district. I want to be a representative for all the parents that work hard and want the schools that they send their children to be safe, compassionate, high-achieving, and inclusive. I believe teachers and staff need to be supported. I want for our community stakeholders to be proud of the school district where they live. I want to make sure Rochester Community Schools and the greater Rochester area continues to be a destination. I hope that I have earned your vote and your support.
Dennis Talluto.
Again, thank you for everybody being here tonight. Despite all the bad news, the reason I'm here is because I want to be part of the solution. I want to be part of the change that restores this district. There's four key pillars to my platform: restore board integrity and restore trust. We have to restore the trust. Restore parental rights and responsibilities.
Your time is up. Jessica Gupta.
Thank you to everyone who participated tonight and to the League of Women Voters for hosting us. My heart is filled with appreciation for the outpouring of community engagement in this campaign. Regardless of the outcome of the election, I'm still going to continue to be an advocate for our students, a volunteer in our schools, and a source of emotional support for our kids. If you believe, as I do, that cultivating an inclusive school environment that allows every student to thrive is essential, please consider supporting my campaign. Experiencing safety and belonging can make a difference.
Thank you. The League appreciates all candidates and members of the audience for participating in this program. We would like to thank the City of Rochester Hills for making the forum possible and Jason Dale for all his help. It will be rebroadcast daily on Rochester Hills channels, WOW Channel 10, Comcast Channel 20, and AT&T Channel 99 at 7 o'clock p.m. and 5 o'clock p.m. It will also be available on demand on the city's website, rochesterhills.org, and the League's website, lwvoa.org. The League has prepared a voter guide for the upcoming general election, which is also available at the website vote411.org. By simply typing in your address, you can view the biographical information as well as responses to questions asked of all the candidates that will be on your ballot. We hope this candidates forum has been beneficial and will help you cast an informed vote. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 8th. Good night.
Yeah,